Welcome to the first video on the role of the Board Secretary video series. My name is Scott Vaughn and I'm with the Community Development Unit of the Government of Alberta. The goal of this video series is to introduce you to the role of the Secretary of a nonprofit board. In this series, we'll explore the responsibilities of the Board Secretary, the various ways that the Secretary assists the Board, how the Secretaries perform their duties in small and large nonprofit organizations, and how they can best perform in their role as the Secretary of the Board. The information and concepts presented in this video series are from a board member perspective and are at an introductory level. So the series focuses on the information you need to know if you are a first-time nonprofit board secretary, are considering becoming a board secretary, or are looking for a refresher on the subject. Please note that the information presented in these video recordings and the related materials are not intended to constitute legal advice, the rendering of legal concepts, consulting, or other professional services of any kind. We simply want to share with you information that we think will be helpful as you navigate your organization through its operations. We're not lawyers, chartered accountants, or other kinds of financial professionals, so for your own organization's specific questions related to the material that we present, you may need to seek the advice from a professional in the related area. We also have several resources related to the topic that you may find helpful. The links and resources can be found in the course, on the Nonprofit Learning Center, or in the description of the video on YouTube. By the end of part one of this video series, you'll be able to explain why the board secretary position is so important and identify 5 key board secretary functions. Being a good board secretary requires a lot of hard work and dedication. An important part of a well-functioning nonprofit board is a board secretary that carries out key functions of the position properly. The value of having a good board secretary can never be overstated. Now, you may ask, why do we need a board secretary in a nonprofit board? And what are some of the qualities and skills that a board secretary needs to have? There are 5 overall key functions of the board secretary of a nonprofit board. The board secretary captures and keeps a record of board direction, ensure board organization documents and information can readily be accessed, is the contact person for board documents and information, maintains and preserves the history of board organizations' documented information, and serves as a board member on the executive team. Now let's go into more detail on each one of these functions of the board secretary. One of the most important jobs of a board secretary is taking accurate notes during meetings. This means clearly recording the decisions, motions, policies, and directions that board members agree on. You probably heard this called taking minutes. Taking accurate minutes during the meeting is a big responsibility, but it doesn't stop there. Those minutes also need to be shared with board members soon after the meeting. What soon means can be very depending on the board, but let's be honest, finishing them a few hours before the next meeting isn't good enough. With today's tech and expectation, most boards aim to send out meetings within a few days. So why are minutes such a big deal? When the board secretary captures decisions clearly and gets them out quickly, it helps the board stay on track and follow through on what they've committed to do. The sooner the board members receive the minutes, the sooner they take action. It's that simple. This also sets a strong example. A board that follows through and gets things done builds trust within the organization and with the wider community. And when an organization does what it says, it lowers the risk of things slipping through the cracks or decisions being delayed, which can reduce potential legal issues down the road. Capturing and recording board directions decisions is also important in other key gatherings like planning sessions. Board planning sessions help the board set a clear direction for how they'll work toward the organization's mission. Often, this involves creating a strategic plan. In such sessions, it's the board secretary's job to accurately document the board's discussions and decisions during the planning process. And that responsibility doesn't end once the plan is created. Any updates or changes made later on also need to be clearly recorded. Similar to board planning documents, bylaw and policy changes need to be captured correctly by the board secretary. This includes ensuring all updates and changes are reflected in a timely fashion in the organization bylaws and board policy manual documents. There are a few other important areas where capturing and keeping track of board direction really matters. Meeting calendars. It's important to keep an accurate record of the board's meeting schedule. If the dates or times change, make sure those updates are reflected right away. Special meetings and AGMs. Depending on the organization's bylaws or specific role job description, the secretary might also be responsible for recording board directions during special meetings or annual general meetings, not just the regular ones. And the other key documents. The secretary is likely also involved in tracking updates to board agendas, financial reports, incorporation documents, and any other materials where the board makes decisions or gives direction. As you can see, there are many areas where the board relies on the board secretary to capture and maintain a clear, accurate record of its direction. It's a big job and an essential one. Another function that a board secretary has is ensuring access to board documents and information. Just like recording the board's decision, it's important to make sure that board documents and information are easy to find when board members need them. One of the key roles of the board secretary is helping the board and organization stay organized and ensuring everyone can quickly and easily access the information they need. These days, people expect information to be easy to access. And thanks to technology, that expectation applies to board members too. It just makes sense that every board member should have a quick and simple ease of access to key documents like board minutes, planning documents, bylaws, and policies, especially when making decisions. Documents that outline internal and external rules that board must follow, like incorporation records, building codes, policies, and procedures. Information about the organization's work, the programs, the services, the supports, and current initiatives, and an up-to-date membership list. Having this kind of information at hand is no longer a nice to have, it's the standard. Usually, this means that board members can log in through their laptops, tablets, or phones to access a dedicated portal online and access the documents. One of the key responsibilities of the secretary is making sure the information they access is accurate, up to date, and accessible whenever it's needed. And if the board is still working with printed materials, the secretary should ensure the hard copies are current. Outdated copies can lead to confusion and missed details. If the organization hasn't set up an online platform yet, the secretary may be in a great position to help lead the way. The responsibilities of a board secretary also includes making sure board members have timely access to important documents. Secretaries are the go-to contact for people outside the board when they want to talk to the board. This includes members, clients, or beneficiaries, funders, partners, and the wider community. A big part of the board secretary's role is making sure that important board information is readily available and easy to find. That might include past motions, new or updated policies, the organization bylaws and strategic plan, and upcoming board meeting dates. If someone, whether it's a funder, a community member, or a partner organization, asks for board-related information, the secretary is the point person. They might work with a staff member to gather what's needed, but it's still their responsibility as the board secretary to make sure the right information gets out through the right channels. Sometimes that means preparing official documents, like submitting an audited financial statement to corporate registry, often in collaboration with the treasurer. Other times it might be as simple as replying to an email or text that asks, when is the next board meeting? Big or small, handling board information requests is a core part of the board secretary's role. Secretaries are also responsible for making sure that board-related information shared across all communication platforms is accurate and up to date, whether it's on the website, social media, newsletters, or even in media like radio or TV. And finally, let's not forget, a secretary's work plays a big part in how the organization shows transparency and builds trust. Being open and responsive with board information helps the organization maintain a strong reputation with the public and with key community members, collaborators, and other interested and effective parties, like stakeholders. Secretaries help model that transparency in every step of the way in the work they do. The next board secretary function is maintaining the board's and the organization's history. All key board documents, both current and past document, should be preserved for historical purposes. The board secretary is the point person for ensuring the group's history is captured and preserved. This includes capturing, filing, and storing of board minutes, motions, bylaws, strategic plan documents, key financial information, and the like. This also includes all incorporation documents. The board secretary also needs to become familiar with the history of the organization in order to bring forward key dates, key information, and insights from the past that might inform future direction of the board. If the board or organization's documented history has not been captured or compiled well before their term, the board secretary should take steps to pull together the documented history of the organization wherever possible. This may include gathering the incorporation documents if the organization is incorporated. The board secretary may also find some concerns as they review the board secretary and organization's documented history. For example, the secretary may find that the organization has been following a set of bylaws from the early 70s. That's something they should bring to the attention of the board. That might initiate reviewing bylaws, and the secretary has played a key role in initiating that project. The secretary should also share information that might lead to recognition or celebration. For example, the secretary may share with the board that their organization has been serving the community for 50 years. The board can decide if they want to have a community celebration. The secretary could also help the board and the organization increase their awareness of their history and leave the historical documentation of the organization in a better place than when they started their term in the position of the board secretary. Serving as a board member and a member of the executive team is the last of the 5 functions of the board secretary. The board chair, vice chair, treasurer, and board secretary are often a committee of the board named the executive team. A key role the executive team has is to plan board meetings and ensure they go well. Secretaries do all the work they do for the board also for the executive team. For instance, if the executive team is meeting to plan the next board meeting, the secretary should share things like the minutes of the past meetings, action items from the recent meetings, or any other documentation that the executive team needs in order to plan the upcoming board meeting. A reminder here is that the board meetings are always the responsibility of the board. The items on a board agenda are topics that the board needs to discuss. Senior staff of the organization, such as executive directors, CEOs, coordinators, and the like, are advisors only to the development of board meetings. They do not approve the agenda for board meetings. As the senior staff, they may have some items to bring to the attention of the board in planning the meeting, and the board usually asks for their input. But ultimately, the agenda for board meetings are the responsibility of the board. So, along with the rest of the executive team, the secretary shoulders the responsibility to ensure board meetings go well. In organizations that don't have a formal executive team committee, agenda preparation for board meetings are usually done by the chair and the board secretary, and they sometimes may have a senior staff as an advisor, if there is any senior staff. It's important to remember that board secretaries are also board members. They should participate in the discussions and decision-making of the board like all other board members. Even though they have an additional task in meetings, which is recording and providing board information, their views and perspectives need to be heard as well. Secretaries represent membership who elected them to the board, and therefore they need to ensure those voices are heard in board discussions and decisions. Sometimes this can be very challenging. Certainly a key skill for a board secretary is the ability to multitask. Secretaries need to hear and record board directions and decisions, but they should also be actively participating in board discussions. We recommend assigning a backup board secretary on the boards. If there is a topic area at a board meeting that the secretary wants to participate fully in the discussion and not be distracted by the board secretary functions, the backup can slide in for them and take on those functions for that part of the agenda. This person could also share the workload with the board secretary and fill in when the secretary is unavailable for a meeting. The backup board secretary should be familiar with how the regular board secretary takes minutes and how to access documents for the board when they need it, just like the actual board secretary does. Finally, being a board secretary means representing the board to the community, including being proud to be part of the board and the organization. Certainly, the secretary wants to represent the board and the organization in a positive way. Now, reflect on the work of your organization. Which of these board secretaries' functions are performed well on your board, and which of them do you think needs improvement? One is capturing and keeping a record of board direction at meetings. Two is ensuring board organization documents and information can readily be accessed. Three, being the contact person for board documents and information. Four is maintaining, preserving the history of board organization documented information. And five, participating equally with other board members on board discussions. You can pause this video and think about the answers to these questions. If you are a secretary of a board, you may want to think about how you can improve your work in these areas. If you're a board member and you think these are areas for improvement, maybe you need to approach your board secretary or the board to discuss them. Remember, though, that it's important to approach such discussions delicately and ensure you have a productive conversation with your board secretary. Well, that brings us to the end of the first video in the role of the board secretary video series. Thank you for watching. In the second video, we'll take a deeper dive into the 5 functions of the board secretary and describe some activities and actions that the board secretary can perform to support these functions or relate to them. If you're in Alberta and have a question or need further information or would like to request our services, you can contact us by email or phone. You can also access our website to know more about our resources and services. Lastly, if you want to be notified of our future services and resources, you can add your email address to our subscription form and you'll receive updates as they become available. The link to the subscription form is in the description of the video as well. Thank you for your attention. Take care, and always remember that our communities have so much more because of everything you do. Thank you, and bye for now.